Welcome in to the Nebrasketball Brunch Show. I am Jack Mitchell of KLIN Radio and the I-80 Club. That's Kaleb Henry of Husker
Hello.
Max. This is our weekly chat about the state of Nebraska basketball. We do it every Friday here, live on the YouTube pages for I-80 Club and Husker Max. So if you're watching us now, thank you. Make sure and like and subscribe the page you're on. And both of them, even preferably for some different content that we've got going on. And if you're listening on a podcast right now, and you'd like to join us live next time, get to those YouTube pages and make sure and join us. Right now, our live chat and interaction comes from our Discord page, which if you ever want to be a part of, you can go to patreon.com/I80 Club or just support the work that we do. You can do that there, patreon.com/I80 Club. Join the community, hear all our other exclusive podcasts like Josh Peterson and I will be doing tomorrow morning with Saturday Morning Coffee. And you can be part of the live studio audience, interactive with all of the shows that we do. All right, all of that said, it's time to delve in. Good morning, Kaleb. How are you doing?
Good morning. Welcome ball and salutations.
Welcome ball. Welcome ball to everyone. Kaleb and I were together last night attending the Nebraska Rutgers game, which was, as you know by now, I'm sure, an 85-82 loss for the Huskers, breaking their record-breaking home winning streak, breaking that long conference home winning streak as well, and making it a 3-game losing streak for Nebraska right now.
You're painting a great picture.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about everything for the next 48 or 58 minutes.
Kaleb and I were just remembering that this is the last time we went to a game together as fans, which is pretty much the only way I go to a game. But last time we went together was the Illinois game 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
January 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years and a week ago, when Nebraska lost big to a good Indiana team, and Juwan Gary also got hurt during that game, and I believe was out for the rest of that season.
Yep. So. And that's when we started to see the emergence of Keisei Tominaga. You saw Sam Hoiberg get a lot more run, and obviously that helped out the way the team last year was able to get themselves into the NCAA tournament, and whatever their ceiling was aided by the fact that you were able to get some minutes that you weren't planning on in that season 2 years ago. Now, since then, though, Jack, this is the incredible part. There, between us going together as fans to that Illinois game and us going together as fans to that Rutgers game yesterday, there were only 2 other losses in the building between there. Only 2 other losses over that stretch of time in that building for Nebraska men's basketball.
I know Michigan State is one of them at the end of that season, right?
And Northwestern as well at the end of that season.
Yeah, at the end of that season. And then they lost to Creighton the next year, non-conference.
That'd be
another one. So 3 in that building in between those 2 games that we went to. So, yeah, well, I guess we won't be doing that again. At first, we just thought it was me that was the problem, but then apparently it's us that's the problem.
I don't think it's us that's the problem.
I think it is
you. It's definitely a you,
because I was not at the Michigan State game that they lost per your and many others' requests, and they still lost that game. And now they went on a huge winning streak, but that's long gone. It's done. It's over.
Yes.
Before we go any further, we need to do our NCAA confidence meter rating. That is our tradition at the beginning of every show. Kaleb and I throw out a number between 1 and 10, which represents our confidence in Nebraska will make the NCAA tournament. Go ahead, Kaleb. What are you doing here?
Well, what were we both at last week? I was a 9.5. You were as high as you'd been at
I was a 7.5.
7.5. Now 3 straight losses. Have not looked good. So since the last time we talked, you had the Purdue game at Mackey Arena, and you had the Rutgers loss last night. I'm a 7.1 right now. Okay. I'm a 7.1.
Care to explain obviously we know why you dropped, but why you dropped it the amount you did.
So on the one hand, a loss on the road, as we have called it, is more of a missed opportunity than overall detrimental to what your resume can be. But to get lambasted, to get destroyed, shellacked, all of it at Mackey Arena, that was as I called it in the headline, got embarrassed at Purdue. Just did not show up from start to finish. You can lose on the road. You lost at Iowa. It was frustrating, but you went to overtime. You had to collapse late. Didn't impact me near as much as getting absolutely torched at Purdue from start to finish. And then you have to win at home. And what does Rutgers really have? I know that it's 2 lottery picks. And for a lot of the game, and we'll break it down more, but Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper just looked like okay guys, like they're good college players. But you got late in the game and they went to their lottery picks, and Nebraska had zero answer. Nebraska went almost 5 minutes at the end of the game, up until that Brice Williams 3 to cut the deficit to 1. Until he hit that, Nebraska had gone about 5 minutes without making a shot. You're at home in winning time against a team that is 9-8, barely over 500. You have a 20-game home winning streak. How do you not close that out, knowing that you have to protect home court in this league? I know Nebraska was not, like, Rutgers guys were getting the benefit of some officiating, especially on travels, but that's not an excuse compared to the overall. You're not making shots, you're not getting into places you need to, and you are at home. You're not in Iowa City, you're not in West Lafayette, you're in Lincoln. And that's why I have a 2.4 point drop down to a 7-1.
7-1. Okay.
7.1 is where I am at.
All right.
Which currently is below yours until you give.
For 4 seconds, yes. You are
officially lower than Jack Mitchell's for now.
Yeah. Yeah, my number will be dropping precipitously. I was at a 7.5 last week, and what I said was that road losses were not going to hurt my level of confidence unless Nebraska started losing home games. I amend what I said there. I didn't in my mind factor in the potential of road absolute colossal Harlem Globetrotter style blowouts. So that did affect it. The Rutgers game, a home loss, incredibly affected it. The vibe of the last 3 games, 2.5 games, has affected it. And my own self-pity has affected it. So I will be dropping, I think, one of the biggest probably jumps in either direction we've ever had, maybe the biggest. I am going down to a 4 from 7.5. Okay. I am at 4 now.
A 35% drop.
So yeah, I am at a major drop. I am at 4. Is that an overreaction? Perhaps. We'll see. I hope so. We're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss whether this stretch has happened in previous seasons that have ended up going the way that we hoped they would for the most part. But not only was the Purdue game just super discouraging, it hurt the resume because it was a blowout, and the whole vibe of the Rutgers game was rough. It just was rough. I haven't seen this team look, since we last gave a rating, like they're gonna snap out of this anytime soon.
Yeah.
Unless it just changes on a dime, which it can, and it has, and maybe it will. But there is nothing from these last 2 games that gives me the kind of hope that I had going into these 2 games. And so, yeah, I'm greatly affected by these more than I thought I would ever been. This is the complete worst case scenario, Kaleb, outside of some kind of an injury or something. The results in these games are the absolute worst case scenario I could have ever imagined. between last week's show and this week's show. So,
and think about how close we were to this not being the case with Nebraska up 15 in Iowa City. Like,
that's like when that hits.
What were the vibes from that moment compared to now is 180 in the most 180th of ways.
Right. Yeah. Snapshot that moment. And that is the peak of the season right there. Right. You're about to go get this road win in the Big Ten. You're about to get ranked. It's about to get crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been the drop off on the Orient Express at Worlds of Fun in Kansas City since then. Straight down.
Yes.
Straight down since then.
Now, so talking about where the vibes are, and we're both in the arena last night, and fantastic
in a suite, so kind of not, but
thank you again to Wegley for helping get the Jack Mitchell softball experience team into a fancy suite. But we're there, and because of our location, we're kind of overlooking the entirety of the experience of what's happening in Pinnacle Bank Arena. And even when Nebraska got up 10 in the first half, I wouldn't say the vibes were getting anywhere near immaculate. It was like that was hard to get to 10. And then Rutgers does a little bit of everything here and there, and Nebraska goes stagnant on offense like they do, and all of a sudden Huskers are down 3 at half. And then that's ultimately what ends up being the difference at the end of the game. But you can't, on your home court, when you have a chance to kind of do a knockout blow early and make it, especially if anyone watched the pregame for Rutgers, there was some talk on social media how unserious Rutgers looked in like shoot around in
I saw Bigelow tweeted that. I don't even know what that means exactly.
They're messing around. It looks like an AAU. You've got 5 minutes to warm up. Just go get some shots. They spent like 5 minutes just going through and dunking. It's like, guys, everyone on your team is just going to go through and dunk for the next 5 minutes. At no point is that going to come up as the thing that helps you today. They did like it. And the reason for that, the two best players on the team are 18 years old, maybe 19. I don't know if they got a fall birthday, whatever, but they're freshmen. Like, they're young dudes. They're going to be lottery picks. And everyone else on the team is just there. Now, they'll get some points. They'll get some byproduct of those guys being really good. But you're Nebraska at home on a 20-game winning streak. Just last year, you knocked off a couple of giants in your league. All you have to do is get a knockout blow in the first half, and it's a couple of freshmen on the other side while everyone else is kind of falling apart. And Nebraska couldn't do that. And you had so many stretches where, again, like Jawan Gary scores 20 points, and I didn't like the majority of his shots. It took Brice Williams until that 3 with 15 seconds left to become the team high scorer at 21. And you had, late in the game, no idea what you were doing on offense. You had turnover, you had bad shot, you had missed free throws, almost 5 minutes without getting a basket, couldn't figure out how to foul in the last minute, burning time and time and time. And what does Rutgers do? Rutgers did, and yes, Brice Williams gets that 3. He had a good last 70 seconds of regulation against Iowa. Rutgers knew who they were going to in a tight game. Sometimes I don't know, even with Brice Williams, that Nebraska knows that. You saw Raleigh Wooster all of a sudden dribbling for 20 seconds and then trying to take a step back mid-range jumper, and thank God he got fouled for it to be worth anything. But at the end of the game, when things are tight, what you and I have talked about is that it's, how does Brice Williams just say, I'm taking over right now? And you saw that with Ace Bailey. You saw what Dylan Harper had done. You saw those guys. They got the ball, and it didn't matter what the other 4 guys were doing on offense. They said, I'm going to get to the rim right now. And they went and they got layups. It's like, okay, you know what they're doing, and your defense is built to stop something happening in the lane and then hope that they miss threes. And in winning time, Nebraska's defense said, would you care for a layup? Would you care for another, sir? We would love to be hospitable to what you are doing in our paint right now.
He just went right through him.
It didn't, like, nobody went through. What are you doing if you are like Braxton Mia, Berke Buchtengel? At some point when those guys, and I'm not saying go hurt somebody, but what you should be doing when a guy comes through the paint and you know they're getting there, it's time for a hard foul. Like, it's time to go be a 6'10 plus guy. And they just were not that at a time that you needed them to be that, let alone just getting cooked on the outside by those guys.
When Harper was really driving in, I noticed that Mia wasn't in, and I was like, God, I thought this is why we had him, right? Yep. For these situations. And he was, I think Morgan, I don't even know if Berke was in there. I think probably Morgan was in.
Yeah, Morgan was a run, yeah.
But yeah, it's, I don't know, man. It was rough. It was really, really rough. And I don't even know I'm not sure if I'm more concerned about the offense or the defense. I mean, you look at the numbers and it's the defense, but you watch the game and it feels like it's almost more frustrating to watch the offense, despite the fact they scored 82 points. They, didn't shoot completely terribly throughout the course of this game. And, statistically, they were pretty similar to what Rutgers was doing. I'm not even sure at this point. It feels like whatever was novel about the defense and was giving teams problems has been figured out or is just not working against a certain style of team right now. That's number one. Number two on the offense, it's exactly what you said. I don't know. Nobody feels like they want to be the first option, and it needs to be Brice, but I don't know what's happened with him. I have no idea what's going on with him. And yet he still ends up the last 2 minutes of the game, right? He looks like, for another week, he looks like, oh, wow, when he needs to score, he can. And he does, whether it's outside or inside. It's wild.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
It's wild.
Brice, just go put up whatever. Just go put something up. It's one of those times where you go, nobody is mad at you, no matter what kind of shot you take on this possession. And why does he suddenly hit that? But there's not, with 3 minutes to go in the game, with 4 minutes to go in the game, that same type of attitude of, we have to go get something right now. Why does it take until there's 30 seconds left in the game to feel a little bit of that desperation? Because it doesn't show in the way that they're playing that we are desperate and we need this. Mm-hmm. It just kind of plays itself out. And then, it's the last minute of the game. We're losing. Brice, go chuck something up. It went in. Look at that. Look at that. You got desperate enough for it's Brice time, and it works. Where's that the rest of the game? Mm-hmm. He just kind of gets his points here, gets his points there. It's the last minute of a game and you're losing. Brice hits it. This is the Brice we want in the last minute of these games right now. How do you get that Brice for the other 39 minutes? Where it's, Brice, Nebraska, you're up 10 in the first half. Feel desperate. Feel a little desperate right now and get Brice Williams the ball and say, go cook a little bit.
And by the way, either shoot threes or get to the rim too. Those are the two. Like, this is crazy. You want to hear you alluded to this. Connor Season makes a three with 8:05 left. Okay. 8:05 left. And that made it that put Nebraska up 70-67. So pretty soon, right before the TV timeout. Nebraska goes ahead is ahead 70-67 at the 8 o'clock timeout. Nebraska's next field goal. Okay. Braxton Mia makes a layup 3 minutes later. That made it 74-72. Williams then makes a jumper a minute later with 5:08. And then that is it until Brice's layup with 15 seconds left.
Yes.
That's crazy. That is 4 field goals in the last 8 minutes of the game, essentially. It's tough. it's tough. You're not gonna be able to do. And then there were missed free throws in there too, which was rough as well.
Yeah,
so
in that stretch, yeah, you talk about those missed free throws. There was only 1 point scored between Brice getting that jumper with 5:08 to go and then getting that layup with 15 seconds to go.
So like I know Biff says defense is far and away the issue, and I don't even necessarily disagree with him, but it seems like the offense, when you most need it, is unable to get it out of a hole. It happened. I don't know, man. It's frustrating. It is. The defense is 100% a problem too. But man, when I see I've always said the beginning of the year, I said the scoring droughts are going to be the problem this year. Mm-hmm. But I always thought Brice was going to be kind of the drought wiper outer.
Buster.
The worst name ever. Drought wiper outer. Drought buster. Just call him Rain.
Yes.
But he's not. He's looked at a few times this year early in the year, but the last few games he just hasn't looked at. And I don't even have I don't have a diagnosis. I don't know if it's mentality. I don't know if it's the guys who are guarding him. I don't know if they're playing him different. I don't know what it is, but you got to use him differently. You've got, because I don't know who else is there. I don't know who else is like you're not getting 100 as much as you can out of. There's a lot of guys who aren't necessarily playing well, but I don't know you're going to squeeze a whole lot more out of offensively.
No,
Esiason probably he scored. I mean, he shot pretty well last night. Actually, Esiason did.
Yeah, and so is that it offensively? Esiason hits 4 of 7 from deep. Like, that feels good, right? That's what you want. He's not going to be your main scorer. Do you need him to hit 8 to feel good about the offense? That shouldn't be the expectation at all. And I know the offense had that struggle, had that drought. And the defense played poorly. Like, the defense to me is absolutely an issue. But the offense has to do something. It's that stick meme. Please just do something.
Yep.
You can't go almost 5 minutes without making a shot. If you make one shot in the middle of that, and everything else stays the same, you're ahead in the last 15 seconds. Mm-hmm. And yeah, things can still go against you. They've got dudes who clearly figured out how to score if they can get a good one-on-one matchup. But it's that tight. And for another game, again, part of this 3-game stretch, Nebraska had been shooting 77% or 78%, whatever it was, on free throws ahead of the Iowa game. And last night, 17 for 27, 63%. You missed 10 free throws in a game that came down to the other team shooting free throws and missing several in a row. Like, all of these things are so tight and so little. And Bigelow pointed out another thing that is a big concern for me. That, again, you're at home. You're on a 20-game winning streak. You are starting multiple seniors. You've got X number of sixth-year seniors, fifth-year seniors. You've got 5 guys scoring in double figures. Rutgers starts 4 freshmen. Yeah, 2 of them are dudes. Nobody was scared last night because Nebraska didn't give them a reason to be scared. The crowd was loud. It got pumped up there when Nebraska put on that run to go up 10. But the play on the court did not say, you freshmen should be afraid of the environment you're in. It did not necessitate any fear in what you should be putting in any opponent, but let alone guys going through their first year of college, their first year of seeing these Big Ten environments.
Yeah. In a weird way, it reminded me of that UCLA football game where things weren't going well, but you just assumed this was going to be a get-right game.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that be the kind of the atmosphere, whether that be the team, and then when you started to get some resistance from that, you didn't have down the stretch, you didn't have the fire that was needed to get the win. And so Nebraska drops to 2-4 in conference, 12-5 overall. As I said, the winning streak is over, and they continue to move on through a really difficult stretch of the schedule right now. And I'll tell you what, like, the Rutgers game was according to Bart Torvik, that was the second most winnable game left on their schedule.
Mhm.
Second only to Minnesota coming in on March 1st.
Yeah.
So you've got to go be way better than that. Now, is Rutgers going to be better in the second half of the season, second half of the conference season? 100%.
Oh yeah.
Are they going to? They're going to beat some more teams
for sure,
yes.
for sure.
But they're going to be better than they've looked. But still, that doesn't change the fact that was, and if it wasn't a must win, it was exactly one rung below must win for Nebraska this year.
Where we're at right now, I'm a 7-1. You're a 4-0. 4. 3-game losing streak. Lost at home for the first time in 2 years, almost 2 years, in a Big Ten game. Is it time to, like, are we feeling panic? Are we feeling extreme concern?
Yes. Correct. Yes.
Like this is all going to snowball in such a way that it's not just talking about, can you get in the NCAA tournament? Can it snowball in a way that you're concerned about, are you going to be 15th in the Big Ten, 16th in the Big Ten?
I don't know about that. I don't know if I'm there.
In the conference tournament.
I'm not there.
That far enough concern?
No.
I mean, as we talk about in our NCAA confidence ratings, it's definitely between there on certainly missing the NCAA tournament and being a bottom half seed in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought of it going that. I mean, not that it can't. I mean, there's no limit to how bad things can go ever. But that's not really what I was thinking. It was just that. But I mean, my thought was they're going to struggle. They're not going to win out at home, which was kind of a staple of what I thought they needed. I thought they needed to get maybe one road game, one or two, and then win out at home, and they were going to be in a great situation. The need to get road games is increasing as they lose a home game like this, and that is, as we've learned, going to be unbelievably difficult. It's going to be unbelievably difficult, especially with the way this team is playing right now, starting on Sunday at Maryland.
Yeah.
So,
Here's a question for you, because it has worked so well. It worked really well against Edey. It worked multiple times against Kalkbrenner. Nebraska's defense being designed the way it is, has Fred Hoiberg and his staff out-schemed themselves to have success going forward in the Big Ten, that right now this Big Ten does not look like it's evolving in the way it was 2 years ago, where you had Hunter Dickinson was still in the Big Ten.
Yep.
You had, obviously, Zach Edey was around. You were dominated by big men in a way that Nebraska didn't have. So Nebraska comes along with this scheme of doubling in the post, scrambling around, getting out to shooters, and forcing them to shoot threes. And this year we're seeing if they shoot at least 39%, Nebraska's losing those games. Has Nebraska out-schemed itself to have a bigger slice of the pie, a big percentage of success, because of this defense that is so predicated on stopping a big man? And like last night, Rutgers didn't have a dominant big man, but you still went and doubled and allowed the guards to run free.
At least a big man in the post, yeah.
Yeah, big man. So Nebraska's defense doing this regardless of opponent, to me, doesn't look as favorable when most teams in the Big Ten right now aren't rolling out those 7-footers and playing through their posts, playing through their first team all Big Ten, all American bigs.
No, I mean, it looks like if you've got an incredibly athletic, NBA quality guy who can drive and score. That's a kryptonite to this defense. See Terrence Shannon, see Harper. If you've got
Sam Hoiberg locked up Dylan Harper on like 2 straight possessions.
You did, but once they switch, once they have to switch, things change.
Yes.
So that might be one kryptonite, and it feels like then another one is if you're a team who's got 2-3 bona fide 3-point shooters, and the ease at which teams are getting their 3-point shooters open against this defense, it feels like those style of teams have, we always said, are people going to figure out the 3-3-5 in football? There's a part of me that wonders if some of that is happening, at least for certain styled offenses in basketball. And like you said, catered to beat a style, which is kind of not the way the Big Ten is going as much this year.
Which is also unfortunate, because what are the first couple of years of the Fred Hoiberg era? It was, you don't have a big man to compete in this league. Right. And the league kind of evolved away from those big men. And obviously you expanded and got Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA in. And that's not what the league is right now. It still has the reputation of being physical, has the reputation of a lot of home cooking with the officiating, and officiating being kind of garbage across the board. Like that's just what the reputation is. But that reputation is no longer look to the Big Ten for your first team All-American center. Can the Big Ten still have that with somebody? Sure. But you don't have 5, 6, 7 guys to choose from, like it felt like you had almost year in and year out.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. That's what it looks like with this defense. It looks like it's been solved by coaching and time and scouting. That's what it looks like right now. Now, all of that said, coming off of that UCLA game, you remember what I was saying, man, I am now sold that Fred Hoiberg is a really, really, really good coach. And that seems like a long time ago, but I'm not sure that 3 games should change that for me. So is he, I guess we'll find out, right? This year, it'll be a real test for him right now to sort of turn around what's happening. And so, I wonder what everyone's confidence is in him to be able to do that, because that's what he's been, Nebraska's not had necessarily the personnel that they need always to compete with some of these teams, but he's played a style that makes it work. Can Fred get that going? Can he make it work again? You've seen him do that when he's had injuries too, to guys, right? When they lose players, and all of a sudden it seems like somehow they've gotten better because of the way that the style that they played. Can he adapt to what this personnel is able to do or unable to do at this point? We will see. And it did make me wonder, Kaleb, like, okay, have we had panic moments in previous years like this that seem to be false alarms? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so I'm going back and I wanted to look at last year. So 23-24, which of course ended up in the NCAA tournament. And I was wondering, hey, was there like a panic moment? You got beat by Creighton. This was earlier in the season, but you lose to Creighton and you lose to Minnesota back-to-back. And you lost that Minnesota loss, which seemed like a bad one. Remember that at Minnesota?
Like a terrible start to go into the big.
You were like, oh my gosh, we were low then, I promise you, after a 29-point loss to Creighton and then a double-digit loss to Minnesota. What happens next? You beat Michigan State.
Yeah.
And then you beat Kansas State at Manhattan.
Yeah.
And then you go on a run and you beat Minnesota, or you beat Indiana by 26. And you roll and you roll and you roll. And then you get absolutely destroyed by Wisconsin in a game that looks like you're never close. And once again, you're like, this team is flawed. This team has got huge problems. What happens in the next game after that last year, when you feel like you're so down on them after Wisconsin, you go and beat the number 1 team in the nation by 16 points.
And that wasn't a game at all either. Like
right.
You controlled from tip to final buzzer.
And then you're like, okay, I overreacted against Wisconsin. This team is legit. They can win. Let's go. Here we go. We're going to Iowa. Big time game against Iowa. Lose by 20. Lose by 20 3 days later. You're like, okay, well, that's tough, but you're going to rebound. You still have that huge Purdue win. Go to Rutgers. Lose in overtime to Rutgers. Remember that one? Remember how devastated that was the Juwan Gary injury game.
Yeah.
And I was like, season's over. But that was partially because I thought Gary was injured. But, man, do you remember how bad that game was? How Rutgers bigs just destroyed Nebraska in that game? It was so rough. Then you come back. Then last year, get a win against Northwestern at home by 6. Not a pretty one, but you get a 6-point win. Get Ohio State comes in and kind of blow them out by 14. Then you go to Maryland and you lose by 22. You were losing by 40, but you were losing by 20 quite a bit last year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Same thing. And then Wisconsin comes to Lincoln and you do it again. And then it feels like things are turning out, but you still go to Northwestern and lose a game by 12. My point is, I don't need to go through the entire season, even though
you're right. There were stretches where you were riding the wave of everything's going great. Crap. Right. Everything's going okay. Oh no, everything's going okay. Collapse. And ultimately you get into the NCAA tournament. Are we, and I like where you're at on thinking about this, are we just in an oh crap, but there's another hill coming up of we're okay? Like, is that coming? Or is this team kind of permanently in the oh crap, it's falling apart?
That's what I'm trying to figure out, right?
Yes.
Right now, because I think after that Rutgers game, and again, it was a bunch because of Juwan Gary. I felt like that was definitely the, at that moment, and then they had to fight for a win, but then they got on a little bit of roll. But it was back and forth. I don't know. It's 3 games. Now the difference is none of those that I said were 3 losses in a row. They did not have 3 losses in a row last year.
And outside of the Creighton game, none of them were at home.
That's also true. So those are big. Those feel like maybe separate from what they went through last year with all of that.
Yes.
Right. You go to the year before, and of course that was a 500 season, and so there are definitely going to be some streaks where things don't go well. But
yeah, and that season up until you got to those injuries looked still like the NCAA tournament was in play.
Yeah,
and then it fell apart.
So that in Illinois game with where Gary goes out for the season, they lose that game by 26. They had just beaten Minnesota in overtime the week before. They beaten Iowa. Yep, they beat, but then they go and get crushed by Purdue, get a win against Ohio State, but then loss, 4 games in a row.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you're right. It felt different at that point because you were adjusting to not having Gary at all that year. And wasn't there another injury too? I believe during that season.
Bandamel get hurt?
Bandamel got hurt in that Penn State game that they lost. So they were without both of them. Penn State, Northwestern, Maryland, Illinois lost 4 in a row. So that was rough. And then of course though they they pulled out at the end of the season. They got that win against Wisconsin at home in overtime. And
you got Casey in February is what happened.
Yeah, you got Casey in February. That's exactly right. You got Casey in February. So and got the Sam Hoiberg pick 6. But the thing about that is they had a 4-game winning streak there, 5 out of 6 to end the season.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when you felt like you were out without Bandamel, you were without Gary. That was when you feel like Fred coached his A off, right?
Yes.
Like, so the reason I bring up that season is it's felt like he's done that when things aren't working because of injury, because of whatever. They haven't been down, for a real long time, even if they did in that season go on a 4-game losing streak. they dug out of that in a much worse scenario. Now, of course, they're already in too much of a hole to make the NCAA tournament, and they lost that Big Ten game against Minnesota in the first round that ended their season. But I mean, his recent track record doesn't shows that it's not going to be this way forever.
So was that stretch, because ultimately what that stretch did was propelled them into last season and making the NCAA tournament. You got a lot of guys' experience, and then of course you were able to bring back a healthy Gary. Was that stretch the guys playing free because it was house money? You'd already lost a couple of guys to the season and you were just hoping for the best? Or was that desperation? Was that Hoiberg saying we're desperate to make this work even without the pieces? And if it's the second part, at what point do you feel the desperation to coach your A off right now?
And play that way too.
And play that way. Not all of this. That's a good point. Not all of this is on Fred, because there are plenty of times where you go, you're the 5 on the floor. Why are you just standing there letting Raleigh Wooster dribble at half court for 20 seconds? Nobody's setting a screen. Nobody's moving. The guy just kind of maybe leans into his defender, doesn't go anywhere. When the offense gets stagnant, it looks like it's not being run the way it is designed, because a Fred Hoiberg offense is not designed to have 4 guys standing around and 1 guy who's not a scorer dribbling with it for the majority of the shot clock.
Yes. Yeah. And on that season, when they sort of mustered up their gumption, they had Keisei Tominaga. Obviously, he drove. That was kind of his coming out party that February. But that was Griesel and Walker and Wilcher, right? That was a bunch of guys who were sort of, I mean, I don't know. A leader is too cliched of a way to say it, but you know what I mean? Like, it felt like they were willing them, and Hoiberg at the time, Sam Hoiberg, like they were willing themselves to victories at that point. This team right now does not feel like they've got that in them at the moment. I'm not saying they never do, but that's what that felt like. Just a whole lot. And like I said, they went in yesterday, and it felt like this was, you already knew it was a get right game, and nobody was, nobody had a level of high intensity. And maybe it takes a few losses to get there. Maybe you get, historically, they've gotten there when they get a few losses to be honest. So we'll see.
And my concern is you've lost 3 in a row. You've got blown out in one of them. One of them was at home. One of them you had to collapse. The other one you had to absolutely collapse in the second half. And then everyone hit the showers when overtime started because you weren't out there at all. My concern is, are you bound, and now you're about to go on the road for an early start on the East Coast. Is it going to be a couple more losses before you right the ship? Because at that point, you're playing yourself out of the NCAA tournament without rolling.
Another home loss, yeah,
without rolling and not stealing one on the road. It will be tough if you go into the Big Ten tournament. Let's say you win out at home and you lose out on the road. At that point, you'd be 9-11 in the Big Ten.
Okay, what's your total record then? Let's see. Is that 18 wins?
Something like that.
Let's see. I'll pull it up here.
That's a tough ask. Because
so that'd be 19-12, 9-11, 9-11 in the conference. That's what Torvik projects right now, by the way.
Yeah, and you're talking about where you're at on the bubble at 19-12 versus 20-11. Like, it feels massive. And we talked about that before, having that 2 at the front of the record. Getting to that magical 20 wins feels a lot different. So the concern is, does this have to snowball 1 or 2 more games before the desperation hits?
It's a good question.
And you turn it around, or can you do this at Maryland, a team receiving votes in the AP top 25, good team on the East Coast, and it's an early game on Sunday?
Yeah.
Like in Nebraska, you've not played well for 3 games in a row. This is a tough one to go become the get right game if you are able to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, you can't be going and losing again by 30 or 40. That's going to be, but the you can't lose game comes up next week with USC in Lincoln. USC went and beat Illinois. Nebraska cannot go into that game with a mentality like that for the Rutgers game.
Exactly.
Absolutely can't. That's a must-have. You got to have that place hopping. It's just got to be
back for that one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Oh, the students will be back for the remainder, which will help. But these, honestly, I think these 8:00 games, I don't think they help a lot either. Just because this fan base is so, myself included, worried about getting home in time.
I was stuck in traffic a lot. I was like, so part of
brutal last night.
Part of me was going, do I hate this traffic right now because it's traffic and I didn't leave at whatever media timeout, or do I hate this traffic right now because Nebraska lost? Would I feel okay about this if I'm listening to Kent and Jake talk to Fred on the post game show, and I'm sitting here waiting for 80 cars to get out of this parking lot if Nebraska had won? Like, I feel like I'd feel a little bit better. So I think I was more just grouchy at the moment than necessarily. Right. I understand why you guys are all leaving with 8 minutes to go in the game.
Yeah. Well, you got to finish at 8-6 to get on the bubble now, I think, Kaleb, without going on a huge run in the conference tournament. So you got to finish at 8-6, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 home games. Okay. So I suppose win out at home and get one on the road still does it, but winning out at home would mean wins at home against Illinois and against Maryland and against Ohio State, and let's see, there's one other one, and against Michigan, among others. But so, that still does it, but you're going to have to pull off some upsets at home, which we knew. Now, if you can go grab, now that we've been as negative as we have, Kaleb, if you can go grab a road game here in the next few, if you somehow pull it off on Sunday, if you somehow go to Wisconsin and pull it off, or if you pull it off against Oregon, if you get any of those 3, Kaleb, and then hold court at home, beat USC, at least beat USC. Let's just look at the next 4. Maryland, USC at home, at Wisconsin. Those are okay, 3. Those 3.
Yeah.
You somehow get either of those road games and you win get USC at home. Everything's renewed.
Yeah, you feel like everything's good. And then especially
that's the good point about where they put themselves.
Especially if you beat Illinois at home, and then when you're looking at the other road games, Oregon's going to be tough. But your next 2 road games will be Washington and Northwestern. They're at the bottom of the Big Ten standings right now.
Yeah.
Like there are where Nebraska is right now. The 3-game losing streak sucks. Losing at home sucks. But because of the strength of a lot of teams, there are plenty of opportunities available before you hit full panic mode. Before you go, no, everything is collapsed. It's all gone. Season's over. Could that still happen? Sure. Like you're just a couple losses away from really feeling that, unless you start to grab some wins to go the other way.
Well, and what that looks like is if you lose your next 5, 4, or even your next 4.
Yeah.
At Maryland, USC at home, at Wisconsin, and then don't salvage it all with a game against Illinois. So, and that's in play for sure. That's in play going 0-4. But again, you win one of those road games against Maryland, Wisconsin, or Oregon, either of those 3, you somehow get a win and a quad 1A win. Each one of those would be. It's a huge eraser for this last 3-game series.
Yeah, you got a lot to feel.
You
good
still have more to do, but those are still on the board for you. And so if they can summon whatever it is that they seem to be able to summon when things go to hell under Hoiberg, and pull off, and every year they've done it. Every year, Kaleb, when it looks like things have gone to complete hell, out of nowhere comes a great performance. Like, you can even go back further than we went. Remember how they ended the season 3 years ago? Was it the Trey and Brice McGowan season? They had 3 road games at the end of the year. They went in and beat Ohio State. Well, when they won against Davison Senior Night, they spoiled Davison Senior Night. Remember that?
Here's this. Let's set that part up for you. You get to this season. I'm looking at it. It's so bad. Okay.
It might make you appreciate where we are.
Let me start out in January.
And what season is this? This is 3 years ago or 4 years ago?
Yeah, this is the 21-22 season.
Okay.
So you get like you had some bad losses in there too already. Like you were getting roughed up. You mid-December 102-67 at home to Michigan and got roughed up by Auburn.
Brutal. This is the Brice season. Brice, Trey, Verge, Wilcher, Webster, Latman.
Let me start with, you're now done with the non-conference, starting with January 2nd. Loss to Ohio State, loss at Michigan State, loss at Rutgers, loss to Illinois, loss at Purdue, loss to Indiana, loss to Wisconsin, loss to Rutgers, loss at Michigan, loss to Northwestern, win versus Minnesota, loss at Iowa, loss to Minnesota, loss at Northwestern, loss versus Iowa. 93-70 win at Penn State, 78-70 win at number 23 Ohio State, 74-73 win at number 10 Wisconsin. What the crap?
They always do it at some point when things get. Now that guy had to get a lot lower, and
then lost to Northwestern on Wednesday night in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, and then which, by the way, that happened 2 years ago too. You get super hot at the end of the season, and what happens? You get Minnesota in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, and blow it. Where Casey almost makes a half-court shot to tie it at the end, and I didn't even see it because I turned it off.
You'd already walked out, yeah.
Yeah, I'd already walked out the room in a bad way.
Yeah.
All right, well, okay, that's my hope. It goes against trends, it goes against momentum, it goes against reason to some degree, but it happens it has happened every year. I'm not going to look pre-COVID, but it's happened every post-COVID year for Nebraska basketball.
Mm-hmm.
In varying, but at some point it's happened where they've gotten multi-game momentum when it looks like the bottom has dropped out in one way or the other. And like you said, I don't know how far the bottom has to drop out, if that's going to happen this year, or maybe they just start kind of treading water again, which they can weirdly kind of do with the schedule right now. It's going to be like you tread water against USC, and to some degree, even if you lose it, even if you can't get Illinois at home, you're going to have to pick up another road game then, but there's a few on there that you feel like, wow, if things start going a lot better, that you might have a shot at being able to get. I mean, going to Penn State, going to Northwestern, going to Washington, that kind of thing. So
now going out to Maryland.
Yeah.
They have 5 guys averaging in double figures. And all those are your 5 starters. Those have been your consistent starters. Derek Queen averaging 15.8. That's their leading scorer.
Queen my dishes, please.
Yes, please. 6'10" freshman. So, okay. Does Nebraska's defense work a little bit better when the top scorer is their 6'10"?
Right.
They're their 6'10" big man.
I mean,
your next leading scorer is Jacoby Gillespie.
I mean, Ace Bailey's 6'10", but yeah.
Yeah, but
I get your point, but
it was not the way Nebraska's defense attacks big. He wasn't Ryan Kalkbrenner.
Right.
He wasn't Zach Edey.
Right.
In the way that he plays. But But yeah, and they're shooting decent from 3, not spectacular, but 35, almost 36% from 3. Is this a game where again a team gets hot from deep, shoots 39+% from deep? You gotta prevent that.
Yep.
That's the biggest part there. So does it become something where some of these young guys for Maryland start to really go off?
Maryland has been rough on the road, but good at home. Their only home loss is against Marquette. They have road losses at Purdue, at Washington,
13-5 overall, by the way.
Yeah, at losses at Purdue, at Washington, at Oregon, and at Northwestern. So they're already 3-4 in conference.
Mm-hmm.
They can't very well afford to lose any of these home games. Maybe Nebraska can come in there like Rutgers came into Nebraska, where you assume it's a get-right game.
Well, and you're looking at things went wrong for Nebraska on Thursday night. For Maryland, they were in Evanston at Northwestern and just lost in overtime before they're returning home. So they're feeling a little bit of a missed opportunity in front of them as well.
Yep.
Which team is going to come out and play with that desperation, play with that aggressiveness from the get-go? Because it feels like either of these teams could get snowballed if things really start going the other way. And obviously, we've seen a lot more of that because of the way we follow and the way we cover Nebraska. But Nebraska can snowball teams too if they get that kill shot. If the thing you wanted Nebraska to do in the first half against Rutgers last night, that never came.
Right.
Do you feel any better right now than you did 50 minutes ago?
A little, because I have reminded myself that every time, I say this in football season all the time too. I think it's less true in basketball, but it's happened with Nebraska. Every time you're sure that the bottom has dropped out, you found out during the Fred era that it actually hasn't. They still have where now the question is, how far along have you buried yourself during the season when that happens? That's the question. How quickly can they do that this season, assuming it's going to happen at some point? But that has, if we reacted, you go back to last year, and you're right, Nebraska didn't lose 3 in a row, nor did they lose at home. But how many times at the beginning of that season last year in January, especially, were you ever really any level of confident that we've been this year in terms of their resume for going to the NCAA tournament? You're still probably, after the Purdue loss, that obviously, or the Purdue win last year, that was a boon to it. But I don't know, you're probably still in a better spot this year, right, than you were last year for that.
Yeah.
With the road win against Creighton, that's looking better again. Did you see Oregon State beat Gonzaga last night?
Yes. Yes.
Nebraska is great right now. This is a great team, Nebraska. Now, I would say they are a 9.5 out of 10 to make the NCAA tournament. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so Huskers in College Park Sunday. That's an 11 a.m. tip. So probably about 1:30 we will have after Nebrasketball before we have another brunch show next Wednesday. 8 p.m. tip at home against USC. So you're looking somewhere about 10:15, 10:30 for the after Nebrasketball with that one. 2 games between now and the next brunch show.
We'll see. You gotta get the USC game. If they get that, I think we'll probably be at tread water mode when we get here next Friday. If they lose both, we are going to be at a panic mode. Well, full on panic mode, tread water mode. If they split them, kind of same vibe as we've got going right now. If you win both, get ready.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. The eraser again. Maryland, the Maryland, the Oregon, the Wisconsin road games. Those are erasers. Those are erasing sadness. These are just moments of just grace and wiping out all of your mistakes.
Yep.
In the past. That's what those 3 games are. That's how you should look at them.
Yep, exactly. So that's what we've got for the brunch show and after Nebrasketball. What else does the I-80 Club have over the next week?
We are doing for members only tomorrow, Saturday, the Saturday morning coffee, as we always do. That'll be at 9:30. So if you want to join those shows or hear those shows, become a member. Patreon.com/I-80 Club for as little as $5 a month. You can support what we're doing and get access to all of our shows. And then nothing else till Wednesday when we'll do our next member shows. Those do go live on Fridays if you want to hear those. And our one from last week where we did a mailbag was very interesting. Went through a whole bunch of topics. Kaleb.
That was a fun one. Folks can access that one in its entirety. If you go to huskermax.com, we've got a link directly to that as well.
There you go. Check out Husker Max, and you can find our shows there. And the public can watch now. You can see what you can be a part of Wednesdays and Saturdays if you like that. So, subscribe to the YouTube pages, and that is it. We will be back here with Jacob on Sunday early afternoon. Turn your second TV on with the NFL game. Actually, I think the NFL games start later on Sunday, so I think we're going to be okay on that. We should probably be done before kickoff. I think they might be at like 2 and 5 or something like that.
2 and 5:30. Rams Eagles 2:00.
Yeah, we ought to be done in time for kickoff of that game.
There we go. Yeah, we'll bridge your afternoon into the NFL's divisional round.
All right, there you go. Thanks for joining us today on the Brunch Show. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we will see you next week for another Brunch Show. Bye-bye.